right. We are in business. That should be just fine down there. All right. Okay. Let me make sure that I'm getting that. Yep. Okay. We're interviewing Loyd Larson.
Yeah.
Loyd, where were you born at?
I was born right in the county here, right down near Lake Campbell.
Okay. Your family had a farm there?
Yeah, my family farm there. My granddad had a homestead there.
Okay, and where were they originally from? Larson sounds Scandinavian.
Yeah, that's from Norway.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
When did they come over?
Well, let's see, along about 1879 was pretty close. It could vary a little bit or before or later, too.
Okay, and they settled here not too long after that?
Well,
in the 80s, maybe?
they really landed in Moody County.
Yep.
I think they had a family that they had communicated with or knew or something anyway that they were called, I forget what their name is. It'll come later, but anyway, my grandmother came just a short time before her husband, because they weren't married when they came here. They were They were married. I'm quite sure it was in Flanders, that's Moody County.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1883, they moved into Brookings County, and he homesteaded a section of ground there.
Okay. Okay. You have brothers and sisters?
He did, yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I had 3 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
There was 4 boys, and I had a sister, a younger sister.
Okay. Okay. What are your earliest memories from a farm in South Dakota? Quite a long time ago. What, World War I era?
Oh, yes. For instance, the World War I, I was born in 1912.
Yeah.
And that was before the First War.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was about 5 years old, it was kind of in the war period there, and I can remember riding with my dad when he was appointed somehow to contact some immigrants that were farming here.
Uh-huh.
As to their loyalty,
Oh, okay.
and also for their agreement to purchase Liberty bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the word Liberty bonds is really what, helped me to remember that. Mm-hmm. And of course, I rode with him, and at that time, I think he had a Model T Ford, I think, that he drove around in. And so that's what I remember of the First War. Plus, when I was about that age, I received a card from France. I think the city was Marseille. A neighbor of ours was in the service, and he was in France, and I think it was about the time that the war was over, pretty much. And I got a card from him.
Yeah.
And I had that, and I saved it for years, and I think I had it at least 30 years before it somehow it got out of my sight, and I've searched ever since that, and I felt bad that I ever lost it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was really, really great to remember my neighbor. His name is Clarence Bolsted, and he was. And in his card, I remember he wrote, "How's my little boy getting along?" I can remember that part, and I've been blessed with a good memory, and so I remember things of that sort. But that's and in that time, see, my dad and mother, they were farming down near Lake Campbell. As a matter of fact, one of the farms that they lived on was across the road and about a half a mile east of the Lutheran Church, Lake Campbell Lutheran Church, and so my dad was. They tell me he did a lot of janitor work and stuff like that for the church there, and members of that church, and then of course my granddad then decided to quit farming.
Oh, okay.
And so he sold the farm, but my folks had lived there, I know, a year or two before he decided to do that, and he moved into Volga and did other work, and he was pretty handy at slaughtering and butchering. And he was a regular butcher for a hammer store and a general store there, and so that was really quite a thing at that time. And then they said that he had a reputation of being an awful good butcher.
Okay. What did your family do then? Your dad and mom?
Yeah, they farmed. Yeah.
They continued to be on the farm.
Continued to farm, and then they bought when Grandpa sold his. Why, my folks bought a farm down near Sinai in Oslo Township. It's still in the county.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a bit of task for them. They bought a quarter section. Well, not even that much. They started with 120, I believe it was, and then they added on to it another. So they were farming at least a quarter of their own, and then they rented some farmland too. Then, of course. And that's pretty much how the family lived through. And of course, my older brothers, they were about, let's see, I think one was born in 1903, and about 2 years later, my second brother was born, and then about that time, I guess, my third brother was born right in about in a 6-7 year period there.
Yeah.
And then I came along about 5 years later.
Okay.
And so and then of course my sister was even younger than I, and she was about 5 years younger than I yet.
Okay. The 1920s were kind of difficult for farmers income-wise. Do you remember much about that?
It was rugged. It was. Of course, it was after the war, and then, at that time things didn't move along quite as instantly as they do now. You know. And they had some pretty tough years, and I can remember when I was about 7 years old. That was my first encounter with a hospital.
Oh, okay.
I had another cousin that was a little older than I, and we both had tonsillitis, bad tonsils and adenoids, and so their dads, my dad and his dad, took us up to Watertown to the Luther Hospital there.
Okay.
And we had our tonsils and adenoids removed.
Ah.
And I can remember that. So
probably a little bit more cheaply than that would happen today.
Oh, you bet, yeah. And they took us there, and they left us at the hospital. after they were settled, and they went to Lake Kampaska and did some fishing a day or so while we were recovering. But it's we had rationing, at the end of the first war.
Yeah.
And that's when we first experienced rationing, and when I came back from the hospital, we were purchasing rationing material, the foods,
Mm-hmm.
And among that was sugar.
Yeah.
And that sugar was so coarse, it was real coarse. And I used sugar on my breakfast food,
Okay.
And that sugar was so kind of sharp and stuff. And when I was eating it, then it scratched my sore throat,
Oh, good grief! Okay.
And I can remember that so plain.
My mom used to talk about that. They used to have a sugar bowl, and she said they called it Old Hoover because of the rationing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so, but that's some of the things I remember about that period of time.
Yeah. Did you want to farm then when you were growing up? Is that what you aspired to
that's
do?
the only thing I really knew.
Yeah, sure.
We lived on the farm out there, and
what you mostly corn and livestock.
Well,
and diversified farms.
It was
as were
diversified
in those days?
and grains. We didn't stick with just one grain.
Yeah.
It was wheat and oats and once in a while some flax. Once in a while, we'd try something different, like spelts.
Oh, okay.
And spelts did pretty good.
Okay, what are those, by the way? I don't think I'm familiar with them.
It looked considerably close to barley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had sort of a beard on it, but not quite like barley.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good. Had some couple of good crops at least, and then all of a sudden smut took over.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of ruined the spelts industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a good feed, and it was good for livestock as well as
Okay.
food.
Okay. Okay. Were you going to a country school in those days too?
Yeah,
a lot of people did.
Yeah, that's about the only thing I did know. I went to school, and our farmstead was about 5-10 rods south of the schoolhouse, which on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
So I was close to school and all the time. And I think my first school year was in 1819. It's about because in 1920 they built a new school there, and that was my second year in school. So that was my second grade was spent in that new schoolhouse, and so that part was. It was advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah.
Our home was small. It was a small house, and there was a lot of children at that time. I don't recall right at that beginning of that, but we had when I was going to school, we had up to 36 students in the school, at least that many. Then
that'd be what, through the sixth grade or through the eighth grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then our school, it grew so tremendous. They had somewhere around 50 students, and they had 2 school teachers.
Yep.
And they for at least 1 year, and maybe 2, but I know at least 1 year because my brother went to it. They had the 9th grade, in that schoolhouse.
Okay.
But that didn't last, because Sinai then put in a high school, and I think that was probably about that period.
You go to high school in Sinai?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, we had. I went through the 8th grade.
Okay.
And it's kind of an odd thing happened. The first year that I went to, that is the 8th grade, when the finals came, I had some kind of sickness. I don't remember what the, and I didn't make the examinations.
Oh, yeah.
And so they decided, well, you might as well take it to second year.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 2 years to the 8th grade.
Okay.
And I was able to learn quite a bit. I came up with a 97% plus average the second year.
Okay.
So I guess it wasn't all lost,
No.
And then I went. Then I was interested in the School of Agriculture at the university. So I went. Managed to go 1 year or one term at the South Dakota School of Agriculture, and they called us Aggies.
Or cow college, as they used to refer to NDSU at North Dakota.
Yeah. And that was interesting, and I wanted to go back, but that was right in the toughest of times.
Yeah.
And see, the 1929 crash. That was about the time that I had my first year at School of Agriculture.
Oh, okay.
And so, then that kind of messed up everything, and they needed help at home, and it was just one of those things that you had to spend a lot of time on that. And I guess maybe I made them more money milking some cows 2 times a day than going to school anyway. That was kind of the end of my school period.
Yeah, the 30s were pretty tough around there.
It was. And of course, that was right in the time when I should be getting an education.
Yeah.
And my brother, my third brother, he had 2 years of high school in Sinai.
Yeah.
And in that period of time, they taught Latin.
Okay.
As a language.
Yeah.
And he liked that, and then he studied Latin, and he was a musician.
Okay.
That was really his life.
All right.
And he used
what instrument did he play?
And what?
What instrument did he play?
He played the organ, the piano.
Okay.
And he had the accordion, piano accordion. And he also went to Chicago to the what's the name of that institute? It's still there's still this is it Gilliard's School of Music.
Really? Wow.
And he was in the same class with Myron Florin.
Oh, okay.
And so they were acquainted, And he went on in music, and he agriculture wasn't his bag.
Yeah.
And he was handy with that is musical instruments, and he was handy in jewelry and stuff like that. So he made quite a mark in his lifetime. He taught the piano accordion, and he had 2 or 3 accordion orchestras of his students.
Oh, really?
And they entertained a lot of areas. That's the demand for that at that time. But he had a heart attack at age 52, and that ended his career.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that's my education was limited in that way. But I did like to read, and I did read, and that really got me started. And my dad joined the Farmers Union in that period of time.
Okay.
And so I was a age where I could be a junior junior and I began to take a lot of interest in education, and I kind of wanted education for my younger people that was coming up with me, because in the way. And so I began being active, and I was active in the junior work, and I became the county junior leader.
Okay.
And we had several locals in the county.
What year would that have been?
That would be right in the middle 30s, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when the Farmers Union was quite active, and of course with all the droughts and stuff, they would band together and they would order a carload of coal, and they also would order some feed like corn. They shipped a carload of corn from Iowa, and I can remember that because I was sent to Volga. That's where we had to go and get it, and to get it was in a trailer, sort of a trailer. There's a two-wheel trailer jag of corn.
Yep.
And that was the most beautiful corn I had ever seen. It came from Iowa.
Yeah.
It must have been from the southern areas, and it was a large kernels, and it was really something. And I thought, oh boy, to raise corn like that would be great, And of course, later on, we started a little bit with hybrid corn, but it took a little time for that to become a part of farming,
Yeah, there was an interesting biography of Henry Wallace on TV and Pioneer Seed.
And then one of the things about it is, the hybrid corn was of a later maturity. And I know when we had it, and it seemed to me it was DeKalb. But anyway, it was yielded. You had a lot of it, but it was just a little too late, and the frost kind of nipped it a little bit, so it didn't mature real good. But we had some of that we could feed,
Yeah. Yeah. How was the drought around here in the 30s? Was it pretty dry?
Yeah, it was pretty dry. That was really one of the tough parts, of course, that we had. You'd sow your crop, and the oats would get up maybe 6 to 8 inches, or sometimes a little better than that for height. But then with the drought, the Russian thistles would come in and take over. So we'd cut the grain, we'd cut the oats early before it would mature, so it was green, and hopefully that would make some hay, but then the thistles were right in there too,
Oh, yeah.
And so I can recall stacking oats and thistles like hay,
Yeah.
And I was kind of limber at that time, and of course I got up into Trump to do the stacking when they pitched the stuff up to me.
Okay.
And but that was miserable, and even that, the thistles they didn't really cure like the grain or the oats particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of thistly and hard, but they had some food in them a little bit, you know, and of course, what else could you do but feed it to the cattle, you know? And we had a few cows that would milk, and I know many of us as farmers are talking about, you better not be walking back of those cows if they coughed. and that was true.
Yeah.
You had to be careful. but they survived it, you know.
Yep.
A lot of cattle didn't, and at that time it was so bad that there was some cattle that were starved so bad that they would shoot them and they'd bury them.
Mm-hmm. Was that part of the farm program?
Yeah.
Pay farmers for eliminating.
And I know stuff? I went. It was up along about the county line between Kingsbury and Brookings County.
Yep.
And there was a place where they had a pit where they slaughtered or killed them, and a friend of mine and I went up there to see what that was, and we did. We got up to where there was a pretty large pit that they had there, and they were just got. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 head at least, maybe more, but that they had got down in the pit there, and they would shoot them and bury them and cover them up, you know. And of course, I know I was up on the top there, kind of looking over, and I thought I saw enough, so I didn't wait till he shot, but he was taking a bead when
yes.
But anyway, that was it was really tough in those days. And I know we had a little bit feed, so we were able to take, I think it was 2 head of livestock from a farmer up in up around Sisseton.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we wintered those 2-3 head for him.
Okay.
And that was.
Were there some of your neighbors around there who lost their farms?
Oh yeah. That happened quite often.
Yeah. Did you go to some of the? Did they have any of those penny auctions that you went to at all?
Well, not right at that time. I can't remember. Yeah, I'm sure there was, but I was kind of probably didn't follow that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you know you knew Emil Lorix probably?
Emil and I were real good friends.
Yep.
We were together quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Emil was and that's another big story by itself, Emil Lorix's life. And he was one of the inspirations, I guess, that I would have had or did have at the time. Emil and Oscar Forsheim.
Yep.
And they were really active, and they were probably what did a lot to help the whole Northwest there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the things that they fought for, and I can recall when Emil and Oscar were in the legislature, and they were promoting the taxing of gold ore.
Yeah.
And I was in one of the. Well, I think I was in Volga, I believe. It was on a Saturday night. They came through with their car with they had a loudspeaker on there, and spoke about the gold ore tax, and and that they should tax that because once it's left the country, it's gone, you know.
Yep.
And so, but Emil and I got started with Farmers Union also about the time that I was beginning to do a little bit of farming.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when my first activity was Sanya Local had kind of dissipated pretty much. But he and let's see, it was a good friend of mine, Adolf Quayle, and I, and the Caspersons.
Okay.
And we kind of got it started, and I was elected the local president, and we built that up to, I think we had all of 100 farmers belonging in that local. We had a good sized local. And then and we had the junior group in there, of course, and I was also involved in the junior work, plus helping in the local there, and so we. Well, you got a picture of that.
Yes, a picture from Madison, I think.
Yeah,
it's in the book.
Yeah, and well, it's even one of those there's got a picture of it.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, it was really quite interesting, you know, and we had a large group of youth that attended these picnics or they were sort of a picnic, you know. Camps, you know. That we had. And it was really interesting. And
what all did they do in those days at camp? I've been to camps in much later years, but
well, I don't think it changed an awful lot. There's a lot of camp duties, you know. You had committees, and you had and you'd have some programs. And
you have a co-op store in those days?
A little bit. That was that probably came a little bit heavier later on.
Okay.
That was the early part of the youth work. And
did they do like making little speeches and stuff like that in those days?
Oh yeah, and we had the directors of the various districts, you know, would come and we had entertainment programs, you know, and we would use our own talents, you know, for talent nights and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure, they still do that.
Yeah. And so there was always lots of good, and we had lots of fun there, and the kids really enjoyed it. And as a matter of fact, I still have a autograph book, and I have autographs of some of the youngsters from my local there, and most of all of them are passed away.
Yeah.
Youth work was really important, and through that work I was able to get other youth in other locals organized, and we would I would attend their meetings, you know, and we'd get them active, and we'd in the evenings they had lots of time, and some of the places they would have music, and we'd dance afterwards, you know.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So it was great for the community to have those things going.
Lots of accordions, I suppose.
Yeah.
I've seen some accordion pictures in the files. We got a lot of photo files at the office.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah. So, and then of course I got active then in the state organization.
Yeah.
And that's when I got perhaps closer with Emil, you know. And he was real active. He was secretary at one time, and he was, of course, president too at a time a time too. So he had, and we were good friends, and we worked back and forth quite a bit. And Emil was, we kept close contact up to the time of his passing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those great times. And we would have impromptu meetings sometimes where things were happening, and we'd a group of us would get together, and and Emil would be one of the main people that we were was working with us, and so we, come rain or shine or storm, if we was having something somewhere, we wanted to work over, where we'd go. And I got a call. That was in the 40s. I'd say the later 40s.
Yeah.
I even got a call one night. There was a group that were meeting in Aberdeen, and they gave me a call and asked me if I could possibly come up.
Oh, okay.
And that was kind of a snowy, stormy winter, and there was a little bit of snow moving then, even that. But I went.
Yeah.
I went, and and we had our meeting. And we.
Roads weren't quite as good then as they are now.
No, they weren't. But I got home that night or before morning. It was kind of late by the time I got back. But when we did that, if we thought it was important, we'd try and hammer things out if we could, and we had to, because there was different ideas amongst people,
Yep.
And you had to try and get things leveled off, even your activities were in danger sometimes, But, and then of course Emil was on me as president of the GTA board, the grain terminal, and he was really an asset to the people of the Northwest, really. He did a lot of things, and I attended some of the GTA conventions, and we had, and that's of course when I became involved with the Farmers Union Livestock Commission in South St. Paul.
Yeah. Okay.
And that eventually turned into Central Byproducts, DSMIT, or that'd be the Farmers Union Marketing and Processing Association.
Yeah.
And that was a story in itself. It had its, in the early days, it had some terrific financial losses and stuff, but we acquired the rendering systems and all that, and in the meantime, that was shaky too for a while, but we got that pretty well, and it got to the point where it was really doing awfully good, and it was helping Farmers Union activities, and we had and of course I was on that board for quite a number of years, and Glenn Talbot was the president. You probably knew Glenn Talbot?
I met him, he was president in North Dakota, where I was from, and I met him at the dedication of their new office in 1976.
I see,
he was still living then.
Yeah, and Glenn, we got to be real good friends. He was president of the board, and I think I was vice president.
This would have been the time you were also on the Farmers Union State Board, right?
The state board, yeah.
You elected to that, what, in 1947 or 48?
About 47, I think, is when I was first elected to the state board.
Yeah.
Paul Upsall was president at that time, state president. And then, of course, we, with the state Farmers Union, or the South Dakota Farmers Union, had the Farmers Union Livestock Commission in Sioux Falls was a part of the...
And so this was in the days when Farmers Union board members were the people who represented the organization on the FUMPA board, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So you were one of those too, then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was elected. I was elected at the annual meeting of the South St. Paul.
Okay.
That was really the beginning of the FUMPA. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And so I was a part of that whole story there.
Okay, you were one of the original ones then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know we had at one time we had quite a time. We had to get kind of refinanced, and the board members we were picked on to call on people that were investors, you know. And I was the one here, and I forget who the name of the gentleman that we went together. He was the GTA field man.
Okay.
And so, but anyhow, we in South Dakota we had investors, especially in the northern part of the third district here, be up around Marshall County and those Day County. Anyway, some people refused. You know, they were due to be paid. You know. Some people refused. They wanted their money.
Yep.
And so the people that we called on, there's quite a number of them, but most of them were willing to stay, you know.
Yeah.
But we had one investor that had, I forget, a little over $1,000, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and they were elderly, and I could see where they would want that. But the only other way of handling it was I'd have to pay them.
Oh,
paid, so I paid them off with my own check, you know.
Okay.
And then 2-3 months later, why the state in getting all settled out, where they reimbursed me then, you know.
Okay.
So, but that's what we went through, you know, in the cooperative movement. But the rendering system of the building business is still operating and it's profitable. And in that board, we were able to do one thing that I've been thanked for many times from people who were employed there.
Yeah.
And when I was on the board there, we established a retirement program. And those people are really appreciating the retirement that they received or receiving through the FUMPA, you know. So there's a lot of good things happened in that period of time. And we've got, I think I just got a report just recently, there'll be 384 employees plus people that are receiving the retirement program now at this time.
Yeah.
And so that, in spite of all the changes we've had in rendering and everything, that's and I also worked as a field man later, you know, for them, and I signed up quite a number of people, producers, you know, livestock people, to have a membership in it.
Yeah.
And our company was able to do so well that we set up a repayment program for dividends.
Okay.
And every year then and many of them that had losses, you know, they were getting some cash back, which didn't happen in many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those were days that we had, of course, most everybody had some livestock.
Sure.
And we had some large losses. We had one out west of D. Smith. They had a lot of livestock. I don't remember the total number, but a big storm came through, and their protection was built for the Northwesters, and this one came in from the Southwest.
Oh.
And their feed yards really got swept clean, and it was quite a little over 100 head of dead animals that I helped them find. The storm had driven them way out, and they 2-3 miles away home, and would find some of their animals. But it was. I don't know, and I don't know what his dividend was, but 50% of the dividend was paid in cash the following year. So they received their benefits for being members. So there was some good things for it that helped some of those people.
Yeah, they had a plant at De Smet for quite a while.
Yeah, and of course that's the one that I did most of my work with. You know, because I had when I first was in the field work area, I had part of Minnesota. I had the southwest corner of the state there.
Some of the other things that you had to deal with, this was kind of an area of a lot of cooperative building going on.
Yeah.
There were a lot of local co-ops getting started.
We had to spend a lot of time working to get the co-ops that were organized, but not with any other. They were independents, kind of.
Yeah.
To get them to decide to patronize other cooperatives. But we got a lot of them to do that, to join GTA, that is to sell their products through GTA, and also to put in central byproducts, that is not central byproduct, but central Cenex. And we got quite a number of them that were not in the grain part of it, but were oil companies, and we got quite a few of them to at least give a good percentage of their business to Central Exchange.
There was a kind of a competition with what was now later became Farmland Industries, but I think it was CCA or something. Kansas City.
Well, a lot of them, they just went when they would where the elevators, they would kind of go where the managers suggested they ship them to, and they shipped everywhere else but GTA. And of course the other grain companies had their friends and their pets, and you had to battle all of those things. But we were we were quite successful in that respect too.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like they were just your opposition. They were pretty sharp, you know. And you had to be right up with everything in order to be able to beat them down, really.
Mm-hmm.
But Central Exchange did a pretty good job, I thought. In farmland, of course, they were a separate and they were doing quite well for a long time there, but I don't know how they're doing now.
You know, they pretty much went under.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
They overextended, I think.
But
it was about this time you also had the Farmers Union insurances get started in South Dakota when you were early on the board there.
I was on the board when we started that.
Yeah.
And I wrote insurance as an agent for them for a number of years.
Mm-hmm. There were a lot of farmer agents who.
Yeah. And then, of course, in the process of a lot of those things, we started the bus with and I was a member of the board when we agreed to buy the first bus.
Uh-huh.
And it was really, it did a lot for the Farmers Union to have those buses.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you make some of those trips to Washington?
Yeah, we had that was, of course, we even used them. Wasn't about 1949?
Yeah,
it was our first bus group that went to Washington. Okay. And I forget what year. Oh, I don't remember what it said. Was I was on the first group or not? But it's either 49 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, that I was amongst the bus group, you know. And then I was sent down to. And that was in '55, I think it was.
Yeah. I
was sent down to head up the bus trippers in Washington D.C. Then, and that I got some pictures of that in the album.
Okay, and you drive straight through on one of those trips, or did you stop overnight?
Most of the time, I'd go with the first bus group.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course that was generally somebody, you know, from some other state or something that would help getting the first bus appointments for meetings.
Okay, so you would kind of like stay in there for a while.
And yes, I stayed with them, and well, I stayed there while they went back home. See, and then I waited.
And more would come.
Next week or so, and
okay.
And I know one week I had a group from Texas that I worked with.
Okay.
And they were perhaps a little on the southerner side.
Yeah.
You know. And different to work with, but they were real nice guys, wasn't that? They were real, and they were perhaps a little bit higher educated than some of the groups that we had. Even they were,
okay.
But they were. It was a good education for me too.
Now they would also make trips to the cities, right? To see the regional co-op facilities.
Yeah, I never directed any of those. But I took some of them in, you know, and they were really worthwhile too.
Yeah,
and that was a great thing for the people of the state of South Dakota, and a lot of people could get out out in their countries, and different that they had never had any opportunity.
It's a kind of a different era. People travel more today than they used to then, and that would be a big thing for them.
Really big difference. Yeah. So that was the work that we did in Washington, D.C. probably didn't turn the world upside down, but it helped to educate the people outside of the state here that there are other peoples that had ideas and thoughts and wanted to see things better.
Mm-hmm.
And it was we would lots of times we would meet with other representatives or senators and those from other states too. Occasionally, we'd call on them,
Yeah.
And it did something for all of us, really. Even if you didn't go, you'd have some information, and then you could read about it in the papers and stuff, and it broadened the thinking of a lot of people within the area.
Yeah, maybe somebody who had been there on the trip could come home and talk to their neighbors about it.
Yeah, and a lot of them did that, too.
Yeah.
And so that, and I used to receive a card or a letter or something from the people that had been
okay
on their tour.
Yeah.
They called us bird dogs,
Oh, really? Yeah.
That was from different states, and there's pictures of them here. But they, and of course we'd have, in the meantime, we'd have to do, we'd kind of get together, we'd plan things and stuff like that, and you always had to try and report back home and let them know what's happening here.
Yeah.
So it was worthwhile for me, and we did affect some of the legislation in spite of it.
Mm-hmm.
I recall one thing that happened. Senator Case, you remember Francis Case?
I've heard of him certainly, but
he was really from West River,
and he was gone by the time I moved to South Dakota.
From East River here, it was Carl Munt.
Yeah.
And really, Senator Case gained my admiration more so than any of the other senators. He didn't agree with you always,
Yeah.
But he was one of those that he'd look at this thing, he'd decide what was right, and that would have quite a bit of bearing on what he would do.
Yeah.
And if he didn't agree with you, he'd tell you why, and you could discuss the reasons,
Yeah.
And he was real nice that way, and he didn't always vote the way you kind of thought he ought to. But one time, there was a big explosion of excitement out there. Bribe money happened to land on Senator Case's desk. And he didn't go for that.
Yeah.
And he publicized it. And it was a petroleum company in Texas that had done this, and they had left the money right on his desk. And he made it public, but our second senator wouldn't do it for him. Wouldn't stick up for him.
Oh.
And I met with him many times, and wanted him to, because this company was trying to get some special legislation that was really going to profit them.
Yeah.
That's just what it was. And the case was against it.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't believe we should do that.
Yeah.
And we knew that our other senator was not going to do that, support the case and that. So I met with him many times, trying to get him to change his attitude and support. And always he had the excuse, I have to listen to both sides of the story, and I have to make up my mind, and I haven't made up my mind yet. I met with him in the morning about 10 o'clock, or between 10 and 10:30 or 11, right in that period, just before the Senate session opened, just before he had to leave. And I begged him again to support the case's position on it, because it was fair and right to do.
Yep.
And he still had the same excuse. Well, I haven't heard all the excuses. And when the vote was cast, his cast went favoring the oil company.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of lost a lot of respect for that character because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we as a group of bird dogs did a lot of that kind of stuff in between bus groups.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
who was running the Washington office at that time for the Farmers Union?
well, Bud Vogt was one of them.
Okay.
And Baker. What's his first?
Yeah,
I don't know why I should forget it, but anyway, that's a few years ago.
Yes, yeah, he was involved in the Green Thumb program later on, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. And but that between them and then they kind of helped us to do some of the things, to help make things better for the next group coming.
Sure.
Stuff like that. That was, but really the highlight though was in, I believe it was 56, the winter of 56, and we had quite a drive trying to improve the agriculture programs, and we had worked real hard on that. And we had worked to the point where we'd got it through Congress even. When Congress passed the Farm Bill, a 90% parity bill.
Yep.
And the president was Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was campaigning for president, he, especially in Minnesota, I forget the name of that city, and he stated there particularly that he was for parity for the farmers. Mm-hmm. They should have parity.
Yeah.
And he pledged to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when it came to his desk, he contacted the Secretary of Agriculture, which was Benson.
Yeah, Ezra Taft.
Yeah. And also, and he advised the president to veto it.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't quite override the veto.
Mm-hmm.
That was a sad situation.
Yeah.
And actually that was the turning point of successful legislation to help family farmers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the final blow.
Yeah.
After that, they were never able to get anywhere near what would really help to keep a lot of people on the farm doing the kind of work that was really benefiting our whole country.
Yeah. There were, from the early 50s through the early 60s, they had wheat referendums every year.
Yeah. And, that was tough because they would, the opposition had a lot of finances and abilities that you just couldn't defeat, many times, and they had ways of getting certain things involved in this, so that it would negate the real affair of what was supposed to be happening,
One of the other things, of course, that happened about those times when you were on the State Farmers Union Board was the building of the office at Huron.
Yes, yeah. I was on the board at that time. Yeah. We were meeting in Mitchell. We had the office in Mitchell, and then we decided to move to Huron. I think one of the reasons was that a little more central for the people of the state, and as we went through that, Emil Lorix and Paul Opsahl were really the real good leaders in getting things lined up so that people could decide what to do and stuff like that.
Yeah. Was there any disagreement about where to put it at?
Well, it wasn't too bad, really. There was some that wanted to keep it at New Mitchell,
Yeah.
And I guess maybe had talked about Sioux Falls too, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But and Yankton was mentioned at one time.
Yeah, they had originally had it way back.
Yeah. So, but I was on the board during that whole period of time there, and it was a nice setup, and it's still well used.
Was it difficult to raise the money for that, or not?
Well, it took a lot of effort, to do that. But as far as my memory is concerned, we were always able to somehow manage to solve the problems as they come along, and so we had it. Of course, we had help from the Cooperative, so that is the GTA and the Central Exchange and things like that, and they were always helpful too, and, and helped us to raise money, for And there's one thing about that. There's a plaque on the front of the building there of the directors.
Yes.
And some of the other personnel too. And I am suspicious that I'm probably the only one living now.
Yes, you are. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think it was well worthwhile that we were able to accomplish all those things.
And about that time, they also divided the state into more districts. So your district here got split into, and then Ben Radcliffe was the new District 7.
See, when that was even after I left the board.
Okay.
You see, I had the largest district in the state.
Yeah.
District 3, and it was from the south border of Brookings County to the North Dakota state border. And then we had some tremendously large meetings I can remember one time we had a meeting, and I don't even recall the exact town. It was up along the on the western part of the District 3, not too far from through where the river comes. The river Missouri would be to the west. But it seemed like we had a large meeting, and I was the district president, and I believe we had a attendance at that meeting. I believe it was over 500 people. Just a tremendous outpouring of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, Harold Golseth was elected president.
In 1958, I think.
It was a heart attack
right?
that ended his, and Ben was vice president. And I believe, did I leave the directorship at that time, or just shortly after?
It says here. It says in the records that I've seen in 1964. So, because I tended to look at the Union Farmer, and then of course we always have a list of the directors in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't recall, and I don't recall for sure now who followed me.
Oh.
Was that Hanson?
Yes, I believe so.
David Hanson?
David Hanson, that's right. Yep. I knew David a little bit. He was not on the board anymore when I started, but he was still attending meetings.
Yeah. So it, that's...
And when you left the board, you managed the livestock commission thing down at Sioux Falls before you went to work as a field man for.
Yeah, they had the livestock commission. Things went kind of bad for it about that when I was on the board there. I was chairman of the board at the time, and I decided we better be doing something, and so I called. We had a full board meeting, and we also had, in that meeting we met all the employees, especially the department heads,
Yeah.
And there was sort of a hanky-panky going on.
Oh, okay.
There was one certain buyer that was buying pertinent anything that he wanted,
Oh, okay.
And finally, why, it's one of those things that you have a pretty hard time finding just the exact truth,
Yeah.
And so, but anyhow, it resulted in that we changed the management then, and the board asked me to take it over, and so I did the best I could, and we instead of losing money, the last quarter that I was managing there, we made some money. But anyway, it got sold in the meantime.
Yeah.
And of course, Central Byproducts bought that, and then they contacted me and asked me to go to work for them, as an employee. So that's my connection.
Okay. Yeah. Talked about some of the folks. You want to talk about any of the other folks you worked with? But there's Ben Radcliffe, for example. You worked with Ben quite a bit.
Yeah. We got along pretty good. Ben was a good fellow to work with. And he did a lot of good for the Farmers Union. Yeah, you bet he did.
Goldseth was from your area.
Yes, Harold and I were really close friends. As a matter of fact, Harold, he was vice president at that time, and I was on the board.
Mm-hmm.
When there was so much accusations about being communist.
Oh, yeah.
And there was one area down there at Augustana that had kind of adopted that thought somewhat, that we were on the communist sort of. And Harold and I were appointed from the board to meet with those people down there, and we were able, I believe, to reverse that.
Yeah.
They found out that they had been really misinformed, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we became friends instead of enemies.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what we...
I think that's recounted a little bit in the history in the book.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I'm sure it will be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that... and Harold was he was a real nice man, good man, and he was thoughtful,
Yeah.
So I felt bad when that happened.
Yeah, he wasn't all that old, was he?
No, he wasn't. I don't recall what his age was now, but he was just a downright solid good guy, and he was fair. He was straight. He wasn't about to try to do something underhanded or anything to hurt anybody. He was my kind of guy.
Yep. What about Jim Patton?
Jim Patton?
Yeah.
Well, I got to know him a little bit, but not a great deal, because he was national president at the time that I was bird dogging and stuff like that.
Did he spend much time in D.C. or not?
What?
Did he spend much time in Washington, or
was
he pretty much out of town and leaving?
Oh, he was back and forth a lot.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, and I really didn't have a great deal to do with Jim in many ways, but he was always nice. I never had any problem, and his thinking was right,
Yeah.
And so he was. He was just. I think he was a good president.
Mm-hmm. How about Tony DeShant? Did you know Tony at all?
Yeah, oh yes, I knew Tony better, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Tony was the secretary, national secretary.
Yeah.
And Tony was really a sharp. He probably, in some sense, maybe a little bit sharper than Jim.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yep.
And Tony was. Well, he became president afterward, and he was good. Maybe he wasn't as successful at that as he was as secretary of the national, because he was really he really did a lot of good things as secretary.
Yeah.
And I liked Tony, and I think a lot of people liked him. Had to be.
Yep. Let's see here. One of the things you didn't talk about, when did you meet you were married, right?
Oh, yeah.
And what was your wife's name?
Mildred.
Mildred.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you meet her?
Well, I guess I can say that even before I'd even really met her, I saw her when she was considerably younger too than when we married.
Mm-hmm.
That somehow her image of mine, or on my mind, kind of stayed there.
Yeah.
And that she was one of the greatest wives that a male could have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She would do anything for anybody, anyone, and she did that. Even for me, she'd give her life if she had to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How long were you married?
57 years.
57 years.
Yeah.
Okay. What year did you get married?
We married in 40.
1940.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's June 12th, 1940.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you've got how many kids? I know Dawn.
Just Dawn. Yeah.
Okay.
Health problems, conditions really provided a reason for not having any more children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She developed something that it was best not to.
Yeah. So, yeah, that happened. Yeah.
But she was a great person. She that way to all people, really. She was a great personality.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When did you retire then from FUMPA?
When?
Yeah.
In 77.
1977.
December 1st, 77.
Because I know you were still attending state conventions on their behalf when I started out there.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Because my first convention was in the fall of 74, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cooperatives and farm organizations in general are facing some different challenges today than they were back in those days. What do you think? What seems like the biggest change to you today from when you were involved in things in the 40s and 50s and 60s?
Well, that's really hard to really analyze.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest change probably is in communications.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change that it's lots of it's good, lots of it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And our country has larger problems now than I believe since the earlier days, even up to the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It had its problems before that, and the Civil Wars had a lot of problems with it, you know.
Yeah. Are you optimistic or pessimistic today, would you say, for the future, as you're looking back from your vantage point with a lot of experience?
Well, a fellow should try and be optimistic if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult.
Yeah, you wrote a letter to me here about a year ago about the Iraq War.
Say, I should let you have. I got a copy of it,
mm-hmm.
and I've added on to it.
Oh, you have? Okay.
And I've got it right handy.
All right.
If you got time, I'll let you look at it.
Okay. I think I've just about. What is anything else you'd like to talk about? That's obviously a concern for you right now, as you're.
Well, what I'm concerned about now is the welfare of the average people.
Yeah. Yep.
The average people.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going through in this political era is just, it's almost impossible visualize what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of in a position where we're about to either go downhill or we'll have to go uphill. We won't stay static, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
In this.
Don't let me interrupt you here.
Well.
Okay, I'm just. This is digital too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of those things that happen that I am too old to to be able to visualize what they're going to be, even because I don't even know what they are. A lot of those things, and but we're in a bad spot right now. It's just about impossible to visualize. The only thing I can see is that the big danger, this is what I'll say, the big danger is that our civilization here in the United States has a danger of deteriorating to what the third countries face.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the big danger. And those third countries have just, I don't know if they'll ever be able to come out of that like they should anyway.
Yeah.
We've got some countries that have done fairly well. The Scandinavian countries,
Mm-hmm.
Norway, Sweden, Denmark,
Mm-hmm.
are going to probably stay closer to what they are now than our country.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through a lot of things, and what they have, it seems, have decided that the person
Mm-hmm.
is more important
Yeah.
than the country
Mm-hmm.
and anything else that happens. And I have friends that are well versed in for instance, Norway.
Did you ever get to make a trip over there?
No, I
Okay.
sure wish I could have, but
Yeah.
that's past.
Yeah.
But anyway, why they had they got close ties. They have close relatives over there, so they know pretty much what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they have come to the point in Norway where the people are considered first,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
according to what they tell me,
Yep. Yep.
And we haven't got there yet. And it might take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one thing advantage that the third world countries haven't, and we've got educational institutions that if they're not directed in the wrong direction will bring us to that.
Okay.
But not in my lifetime.
Okay. Well, thank you, Loyd.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is an addendum to the or addition to the interview with Loyd Larson that was conducted earlier this year. The date today is August 19th, 2005. Loyd, do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with the rural electric movement and working to help that get off the ground here in your home area in eastern South Dakota?
Yes, I'd be glad to do that. Another activity that I failed in mentioning in my earlier visit with you, but that during these years, at the same time, the coming of the rural electric development for the farmers was really a hot topic, and we had to do. We tried to get it organized to do the right kind of a job, but we had a lot of other ideas that would delay it or take it away.
The investor-owns weren't very cooperative.
That's
in other words, you're saying, and they tried to block things.
And this happened in the early 40s. I really got involved in it in about 43. That's when I moved on to an area or farm there where we would be available. Electricity would be available sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And so in all of this year, I was acquainted with a lot of farmers and people that are active in my farmers union work. So I decided that I'd write cards to quite a few, and so I wrote to 17 cards to my fellow farmers, and called a meeting that to discuss the rural electric legislation that was in the legislature at the time, and so we and that affected the farmers pretty much, because actually the farmers were getting were what was supposed to be getting the rural electric or the electric service, and then the South Dakota legislature they were they were not in favor of us really, and it was we had to do a lot of convincing to a lot of the legislators, and but I forget what session it was, but we failed to get past what we wanted, and the people were pretty excited over it, and so we kind of, when I sent these cards, we that was our subject, and we were very unhappy with the senator from this district.
You remember what his name was?
Oh yes.
What was it?
It was Jake Bibby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was very obstinate. We were not able to convince him that we had what we thought would be the right idea. And so we, in these here meetings that we had 2-3 meetings in this group, and we decided to do something about it, and to get a person that would work with us to take the job if we could make it work, in the election. And so we when they and finally, we'd had quite a few of these meetings. Well, we decided we had to have a name, so we called ourselves the Progressive Legislative Club, and of course we were the Republican Party was the dominant party in the state too, and they were dominant here, and we were. A very large majority of us were at that time affiliated with that is, were registered as Democrats or Republicans, and so we we had quite a bit of campaigning to do, and we just went to the point where we collected the money, financed the campaign, and we did a pretty good job of it. And we did elect a very competent farmer and a businessman. He was in both, and that agreed with us, and so we made him a candidate, and he won the election.
Okay, what was his name?
Ray Barnett.
Oh, okay.
And so we helped in the state legislature by getting that, and I think the activity around helped us that we did in the next legislative session we were successful to get this legislation, and one of the big things about the whole thing was that we wanted to be able to use the electricity at the lowest cost possible, and at that time the hydroelectric jams were being developed, and we wanted to be able to get the chance then to buy the lower cost electricity, and so when we won in the next legislature, then we were able to get legislation that we could organize as cooperatives, and so all of these cooperatives. There was quite a number of them on the East River side, and there was some on the West River also. But on the East River, they all joined up, and they formed the East River Power Electric, which is now in Madison, South Dakota, and so we through that then we were able then to compete or qualify for using some of the lower cost power, and there was other places where you could get lower cost power too, and so we were doing a very good job of that. It was not difficult, of course, many times, because you had people on the corporation side on the other side that controlled some of those things, and so we had to overcome that also. But really the hydroelectric was the big driving power for us, and of course it was lower cost. It wasn't cheap, but it was lower cost. So we did that through the East River, and I believe the West River they formed sort of a cooperative in that type too, so that they could.
Yeah, Rushmore Electric.
So they were.
You were elected to the board of the Rural Electric. Which one was that?
That was the Sioux Valley Electric, Empire Electric.
When were you on the board then?
What?
What board then?
What?
What board then?
What?
What board then?
What?
What board then?